Hi friends, Itheria here, and I have had Savage on the brain, so we are once again getting another video about Savages, but this one is going to be geared towards people who have never set foot in Savage, but are interested in doing so. So the point of this video is to tell you what to expect from Savage and how you can prepare for it. So first I want to describe what Savage is like, because if you don't like the sounds of this, then there's really no point in watching the rest of the video, and if you don't like the way this sounds, then you might not want to do Savage at all. So what is Savage like? I'm gonna compare it to extreme modes because I feel like they are actually relatively similar. So if you've never done an extreme, that's something that you should do to see if you would like Savage. And if you do like extremes, then there is a chance that you will like Savage. So what are the similarities? I would say they're similar mechanics-wise. You will actually see some of the same mechanics in Savage that are in Extreme. Things like limit cut, light party stacks, knockback mechanics, clock spot mechanics, partner mechanics. All of those things are in both Extreme and Savage. So what makes them different? First of all, Savage has a much more demanding DPS check, meaning that it is harder to kill the boss has more HP. Savage also requires a lot more mitigation and planning of that mitigation. While you should not do Extreme without using mitigation, I feel like you could get through a whole run without using it except for on like the really big attacks, such as the ground pounds in Extreme 4. Whereas in Savage, a single raid wide could literally kill the whole team without mitigation. You just die, you just wipe, especially earlier in the tier. Obviously, as you gear up, you get a little bit tankier, but in general, it's still much better to be mitigating because you don't want your healer wasting resources on a simple raid wide when there are more difficult mechanics that require more cooldowns later. So it's really important for a Savage team to plan their mitts, kind of communicate, hey, we need more mitigation here, I can save my XYZ for this, things like that. You figure it out together, and yeah, that's kind of a big difference from Extreme. Another thing about Savage that I think is quite different from Extreme mode is what I like to call the domino effect of death. One person dying can lead to an entire raid wipe. And if it doesn't, usually it leads to at least one or two more people dying, and here's why. There are a lot of partner type mechanics in Savage. So what happens is one player is dead. If they cannot be raised before the partner mechanic happens, their partner's going to die. Or the attack that would have fallen on them will now fall on another group, meaning that the other partner pair is taking 2 hits instead of 1, so they both die. And to be honest, it can be quite difficult to raise people before such a mechanic happens because these mechanics are all happening back to back. You don't always have that much time to do so. I feel like in Extreme, if one person dies, sometimes there can be a domino effect where maybe they kill one more person because there are some partner mechanics in Extreme. Just in general, mistakes in Savage, whether it's due to a partner mechanic or not, can just be so much more destructive. I have annihilated my entire team in P8S by making a simple mistake. So it is much more demanding in the sense that you focus, pay attention, and be sure to do the mechanic right. Obviously, everyone makes mistakes, and especially during prog, you're going to make a ton of them. But yes, it is much more difficult than Extreme with this domino effect of death. So I think those are sort of the main difference between Savage and Extreme. So hopefully you have an idea of what to expect from Savage mode. Now let's talk about how you can prepare for Savage. The first thing you're going to want to do is save up your money. Honestly, you're going to want to have maybe like 3 to 5 mil. The reason for this is that you're going to need to buy crafted gear, especially if it's at the beginning of a tier. You're also going to need tinctures and food. Some ways to get around the crafted gear is if you don't start immediately week 1, then you can farm tomestone gear and raid gear. For instance, the normal Pandemonium raid gear is 610, which is the same as the crafted gear. So if you were going to kind of wait to gear up and start, maybe your group doesn't have a lot of money, that's something you could do. But if you're trying to start immediately, then you're going to need to have the money for these things. Crafted gear is really expensive when it first drops, but if you are able to give it a few days, it usually does go down, and it's like 200k a piece. so it is still expensive, but it's not like astronomical expensive. And another thing is, if you can have a crafter friend, that's gonna save you so much money, or if you are a crafter yourself, that's gonna help too. Also, if you can cap your tomestones before a patch drops, then you'll be able to use them to buy the mats you need to make the crafted gear. So you're gonna want money and you're gonna want tomestones. You're gonna wanna either be a crafter or have a crafter friend. If you have a crafter friend or you are a crafter, then you're not gonna need as much money. You're just gonna need money for the tinctures and the food. It is okay to use old raid food at the start of a raid, especially during prog, but if you can afford the newest raid food, then you should definitely go with that. Something is better than nothing in all cases, but still go with that. You also want to show up melded. I would recommend being overmelded just because it does help with the DPS checks, but again, it can be quite expensive, so if it's not something you can afford to do, then just come with your basic melds. However, there is a way to help you prepare for overmelding. Do hunts, specifically hunt trains. In between tiers, you should be doing hunts at least once a week. I would jump into one, because what this does is you will be building up clusters. These clusters that you can exchange for materia, which will help you meld and overmeld your gear. Another great thing about hunts is they can help you earn money. All the clusters that you don't need for your own gear, you can actually sell materia and make a crap ton of money once the tier drops or the new patch drops. You can also use nuts to buy gear and exchange them for Grand Company seals, which you can then exchange for crafting items that you can sell on the market board and make more money. And another reason to do hunts is if you are current, if it's a current tier, you get all of those things, but also you will be getting tomestones. So if you are in the current Savage tier like we are right now, you can be doing hunts every week to help you cap your green tomestones. This is usually, in my opinion, better than doing roulettes because the overall rewards are better and the time that you put into it is about the same, if not faster. So hunts are really good. They're actually so good that I regret telling you about them right now. And of course, you should be capping your tomestones every week so that you can get a piece of tomestone gear and increase your item level and survivability and perhaps even DPS in the tier. And finally, this one is probably obvious, but you should be watching guides before going into the Savage tier if they are available. And if your group is not planning to go in blind, watching a guide will really help you be prepared, help you better understand the mechanics. I do understand that for many people, you have to experience them to understand them, and that's the case for me as well. But I still argue that guides are super helpful because you know what to expect and you're better able to figure out why something went wrong if you kind of understand the mechanic a little bit from watching the guide. So do watch guides if they're available. Now, all of these things that I've mentioned so far are all well and good and all important, but what about your actual skill level? As I mentioned, the DPS check in Savage is a lot more demanding, so is there anything that you can actually do to become a more skilled player? The answer is yes, and it's simply practice. So go to the balance and look up the rotation for your specific job, look up guides on how to play on YouTube, and then go to a practice dummy and test out your rotation and try to get into the habit of doing it. For tanks and healers, things are a little bit different. Obviously, both should still know their DPS rotations, which tend to be a lot simpler than actual DPS jobs rotations. But for tanks, it's also important to know how to do a tank swap, as well as to know your mitigation rotation, because these things tend to be a lot more important in Savage. For healers, I would recommend really understanding your own toolkit, plus the toolkit of your co-healer. This is because there are skills in every single healer's arsenal that will basically increase the healing potency or healing received, so you can do bigger, fatter heals, and the ones that your co-healer has often also affect your own heals. So let's say that your Sage co-healer has thrown out a Physis 2, since that increases the healing received, you'll know that maybe it's better to save your wings or confession for later. Something you can practice or get in the habit of doing in preparation for Savage would be to start watching what your co-healers are doing, even in normal content. Not only do you want to watch the outgoing buffs so you can see if you have something like Physis 2 on you, so you can see those important healing increasing buffs, but the other thing you want to watch is the actual outgoing heals, because this can help you prevent overhealing and wasting cooldowns in Savage. You see that the white mage has thrown out a Size and a Lily. You probably don't need to do any healing at that point. You can save your Numa for later. Alright, so I think that is everything. If you have any extra little tidbits of advice, then please do leave them in the comments. And as always, don't forget to leave a sacrifice for Lord Algorithm in the form of a like, comment, share, or subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!